So now we're going to Adabat. And you know, I like the concept of Adabat because it's not often that you have Southeast Asia represented. Let alone Southeast Asia in a media where, well, we already have an Asian representative in the form of Chun-Nan. But here we go. Another Asian representative. So one of the kids in this hub world, I think it's that one, talks to Chip and not Sonic. And this confused me because in the HD version, you clearly see Sonic walking up to the villagers and them talking to him. So it can't be that all the villagers are talking to Chip and that's it. And there's also the fact that previous villagers have mentioned Sonic's werehog form. So why did that one kid only talk to Chip? And like because of the presentation, you don't know that he's only talking to Chip until after he talks about more. The situation with this village is actually pretty dark because it only consists of one family and they evacuated here because their ancestral home was destroyed by an earthquake caused by the planet shattering to pieces. That's where they actually acknowledge that earthquakes happen from the planet shattering into pieces. I don't know what to think about that. Like, on the one hand, at least they're using their dark elements by having there actually be consequences. Like, I'm pretty sure thousands of people died. Like, that makes Eggman look more of a threat. But the problem is that it's not focused on very much. So it kind of feels like you're just reading too much into it. And it just feels overly bleak for a Sonic game either way. Like, I don't know, I don't think, like, thousands of people should die in the plot of a Sonic game. That's why I hated Chaos Flooding Station Square so much. Not to mention the whole Echidna genocide thing. Even if the whole game was telling you that you should hate the Echidnas and want them to die. So it lessened the emotional impact to almost nothing. Like, I don't know, like, at least in SA2, the only deaths occurred 50 years ago. Well, I'm sure there must have been at least one person who died from Prison Island blowing up, because Amy must have knocked out the guard to get the ID card that would let Sonic out of his cell. So I'm sure at least one person died, but we never see any of them, so there's no emotional impact. So it's not really dark. It's just a dark thing that happens, but it doesn't have the emotional impact. Like there's a separate thing from dark things and whether or not they give you the proper impact. Either they just happen, like in Unleashed, or they actually work towards the story. Like, at least in SA2, the dark things happening were mostly there for a purpose. They were there to establish Shadow as a sympathetic character. And not so much like in SA1, where the dark things just sort of happened. Like, there's no real reason for Chaos Flooding Station Square other than to give you a cool boss. But anyways, I did not mean to go on another tangent about that. Basically, Adabat Night is easily the worst werehog level in the game that isn't Eggman Land. And it makes it really glaring that this comes before Shamar Night. It's not like there's non-linearity where you can do Shamar Night before this. This is such a difficulty spike. I almost skipped that. And this is still a point in the game where I have no idea how I'm supposed to control these things. It's not until Adabat Night 3 that I finally find out how you're supposed to control these things. Again, it's not very intuitive looking at them, that they're not a timing minigame. I had, like, 0 lives left by the time I finally beat this level. So it's a good thing that your lives reset when you get to another level, rather than you having to grind for lives to get them all back, like in every other Sonic game. Like, that's the one thing I'll compliment the live system for. I so would prefer to just be able to replay the first level 50 billion times to get 99 lives left. Well, at the very least, at the very least, the amount of deaths that I have here can provide some humor value. But yeah, like, most of your deaths are not going to feel like your fault. They're either going to feel like the result of bad controls, relying on broken, unreliable, unintuitive mechanics, and just plain cheap deaths in general. You're gonna see what I mean very early on. We're coming right up to it right now. So far, this doesn't look so bad. This looks like the most relaxing platforming challenge we've had so far. At least in terms of this level, I mean. All you're doing is just swinging from pole to pole. No big deal. This is something we've done plenty of times before. Bullshit! Castlevania! In a Sonic game! Really? That hasn't happened for quite a long time. It's like you're completely defenseless when you're swinging back between those two poles. So you have to get out of your instinctive mindset to always swing back as far as you possibly can, and swing forward as fast as you possibly can. Because if you do that, if you spend too much time swinging around, then you're going to get to the point where they're guaranteed to get hit by the projectiles, except falling to your death. There's no way to kill off those projectile shooting enemies. They hit you. And this also has, like, this area introduces the most annoying enemies in the game. Or at least, maybe the Titans that show up in Eggman Land are worse. I don't quite remember. But these guys are pretty bad. These are even worse than the bees that we've had to deal with before. And you know, I'd like to just throw the metal crates at them, but you can get attacked while you're trying to pick them up. And for some reason, even though these enemies are smaller than the wizards, you can't pick them up. The game will incorrectly register you as trying to pick up the bees when you're trying to pick up the crates. And like, it's so tense just trying to pick up the crates to throw them at them. This entire level is tense. And of course I waste a whole bunch of time trying to get an Unleashed Orb because I think it's an item. And like that Unleashed Orb is so dickishly placed. Like, you're guaranteed the first time you play this to not get this Unleashed Orb until after you've already beaten the combat section where you'd be useful. I'm not even sure how you're supposed to get that. I mean, it doesn't raise you nearly high enough. Like, that's the one new gimmick that this level introduces. Platforms that rise upwards. And I guess this is the first time that you're expected to dash jump on the conveyor belt. The reason I died there was because I was holding back on the control stick to tell the game to stop sending me forwards when I was dashing, but it just wouldn't listen to me. In general, Adabat is so tense because you're so slippery and have so much momentum. I thought only Sonic could go through these places. Like, the entire game up to this point has told me that only Sonic can run along the conveyor belts, and that when the Werehog tries to dash jump over them, he just hits an invisible wall and for some reason can't do it. So suddenly the game just changes the rules on you. It's not a matter of maybe the game didn't expect you to get those extra lives, because if you're not doing that, you're playing the game wrong. This is the point of the game where I noticed the 96 on the ring counter at the victory screen. So not only do they not tell you how many rings that you get in the Werehog levels, I'm surprised they're keeping track of it to begin with when you have a health bar that they fill up, but for some reason they have a 96 ring limit for the Werehog, which is pretty small. In comparison, this is the first Sonic game where Sonic can collect over 999 rings. He does that all the time in the day stages. This increased ring cap makes sense considering how you're less likely to get hit and lose rings when you're always boosting. And larger levels accommodating your faster speed means you'll be able to get more rings. And they probably didn't want players to reach the 999 ring cap and end up getting an extra life for every ring after that. Like, that's what happens when you play through the levels with the infinite rings code in Sonic Adventure 2. Like, you get an extra life every time that you get a ring with 999 rings. So they probably didn't want that glitch to happen. Sonic Lost World also has a 4-digit ring cap, even though you're much less likely to get that many rings. And the game at launch didn't give you an extra life every 100 rings, just like in the Wii version of Unleashed. Like you thought that Lost World was the first game that did that? No. So yeah, it's kind of weird. It just goes to show you how Lost World really didn't know what it was doing at all. Just threw a whole bunch of new stuff in. They introduce a new gimmick here, which is the whirlpool. That basically shows you the direction that the current is going in. That's really all it's good for, because no matter what water you fall in, you're gonna die anyways. This is all about tense platforming. And when you got controls where sometimes you feel like you die because the game registered that you're trying to grab onto the pole too late. And sometimes, like, this is especially dickish. You have to jump off a very specific side of the pole or you're not going to be able to land on the raft. But it's not very intuitive what side you need to jump off of. And here, it looks like you can jump high enough to get up there, but you can't. And you need to get up there to get an item. Apparently, well, it's good that you spawn on top of that island when you die. I'm not really sure how you're supposed to get that without dying, though. Because the camera angle's not making it very clear when you should jump. Like, in general, a lot of times in this level, the camera's too far away from you. And so you can't really tell which side of the pole that you should be jumping off of to land on the raft. Like here, you can die a whole bunch, even when you're replaying this level. Like, I managed to not die here, but when I tried to replay this level, I died a whole bunch there because I didn't fall off the right side of it, or I jumped off the wrong side of it. It's a lot harder than it looks. It's a neat concept, but it just feels really tense, and you can't be tense and fun at the same time. Anxiety and joy do not mix. And just to show you how much combat really does pad out the game, this is the final section of the level. Now, if we didn't have any combat at all, it would be perfect. But instead, we have a huge amount of combat. Now, I'm pretty sure that this can be skipped. So, the game basically tricked me into doing a combat section that I didn't actually have to do. Wonderful. But even without this, the level would have been over with much faster if I didn't have a fight with these titans right before the goal ring. This is a perfect example of how combat just pads out the game. The world levels would have been more of acceptable length if it weren't for this. These enemies aren't really that big of a deal. Just attack them a whole bunch and they die. They're so slow and they turn around so slowly, they don't have much reach either. The real problem is the electricity shooting enemies. You wanna know what happens when you get hit by the electricity? It stuns you. It stuns you for multiple seconds, and you're helpless and can still be attacked while you're helpless. Yeah, that's not cheap at all. I don't really like the whole electricity. I just don't think it's very fun at all, and I'm not sure why green is color associated with electricity of all things. Like, you'd expect it to be associated with the color yellow or blue, like lightning. Like, it took both of the werehog levels that I show off in this video take only 6 minutes, which is pretty short for a werehog level. But they're mostly padded out by, well, everything that you have to go through. And here, I spend the majority of this level fighting. Like, there's this huge platforming section, and then the other half is this. And this is the point in the game where I think that I should be dash attacking these enemies because I forgot that I could pick them up. You can't blame me for forgetting that I could pick them up when there's a whole bunch of enemies that are smaller than them, like the bees and the Chundan frogs, and you can't pick them up. So you got these big enemies that are just the size of the werehog. How are you supposed to know that you can pick them up? The game doesn't keep it consistent very well what enemies you can pick up and which ones you can't. These enemies don't really strike me as reliable. Like, they don't look or act anything like ball bombs. So it's not very intuitive that you can use them to throw them at enemies to make them blow up. Like, they don't really strike me as very reliable. It feels like they explode really suddenly. So, Like, if there was a timer that appeared on the screen, then it would be fine. Like, it's like how the Zelda bombs will start flashing when they're just about to blow up. I don't know. In the HD version of the game, in the Skonia hub world at night to the right in a small lane, a person in a shower can actually be heard whistling the theme from the game's teaser trailer. So that's a nice touch. Like, I guess the hub worlds of the HD version have a lot of nice touches to them, because they're actual environments you can walk around in. But honestly, I prefer the way the Wii version does it because it makes it a lot faster to go through. And honestly, I don't want to spend a long time walking through environments in a hub world I have no reason to care about. Like, it's not Station Square, to be honest.